Hey guys, it's Leslie, and wow, it's been a minute. Like I say every single time I start one of these videos. So I'm just going to jump right in and talk about the books that I read for I guess they call it the Octafinals of the BookTube prize. Now, I judged in the nonfiction category. There's a fiction category, and then this year is the beginning of the nonfiction categories. So I can't remember exactly the group that I judged. I think it might be group D, but I'll put it somewhere if you actually care. I'm pleasantly surprised with the books that I had. There's only a couple, like my 5 and 6 book, that I didn't love. And I guess I should back up. If you're not familiar with the BookTube prize, I'll also put a link to the channel. It's basically booktubers who decided to judge like a literary prize, something like the Man Booker. For each judge, they are kind of randomly placed in a group with 6 books to read over the course of a couple of months. And then you rate them 1 through 6. And the ones that get the most 1s or the most 2s or the most 3s will go on to the next round. So I'll start from the bottom and work my way to my favorite. So coming in at number 6 was Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls by Takira Madden. And true confession, didn't even finish this book. I think I read a quarter of it. I had already read the other 5 books, and so this was my last one to read, and I could not stand the writing style. To me, it is something that is so graduate school or something. Like, it feels like it's trying to be profound, and it really got under my skin. And this is a memoir about a girl growing up in Florida, and she has like wealthy. She comes from like not a prominent family, but a wealthy family, and she kind of has like a pretty suburban life, but her parents are like drug addicts, and basically that's all I can really tell you since I did not finish this. It's totally against the BookTube prize rules, but here we are. I figured because I was going to put this 6 anyway, that I wasn't really screwing up any system and not giving everything else a fair chance. I liked everything else from the get-go a lot more than I liked this. So don't recommend this unless you really want to read a memoir about privileged kids, but who say their lives are crappy. I don't know. It's not fair, but I didn't even rate this or anything on Goodreads. I didn't put it on there because, like I said, I didn't finish it. So moving on. The book that came in 5th for me is actually the saddest for me personally, because it's the one, I shouldn't say it's the one, but it's a history book about the Revolutionary War, which should be right in my wheelhouse of books that I love to read. Didn't work for me. And that book is called The British Are Coming, The War for America, Lexington to Princeton, 1775 to 1777 by Rick Atkinson. This book I don't know what happened. I did listen to the audiobook, and it wasn't the narrator. It's really long. I think this was a 20 plus hour audiobook. And I do listen to it on 2 times speed, so it doesn't feel as long, but I just could not get into this. It felt like it was either way too academic, or it was talking about things that I just had zero knowledge of. And that felt really disjointed, because the Revolutionary War, at least for Americans, is something we've learned about. And for someone like me who loves history, I'm very familiar with the key players in the founding of America. And it felt like I don't even know if they talked about George Washington very often in this story. So for whatever reason, I did not connect with that book. I feel bad about it because I feel like I should have really, really liked it, but it just didn't work for me. The one thing that I did find interesting was how at the time the colonists were trying to also take over Canada, which apparently was not a thing that I knew about. And maybe I'm getting that all wrong in that one statement, but there was something about that I find really interesting, and I'd actually be compelled to read more about that part of history. But I didn't like it, and I don't really recommend it unless you're super into Revolutionary War history and are a lot smarter than me. The book that came in fourth on this list, I guess, my list, is Stony the Road by Henry Louis Gates Jr. This is a book, as it says, about Reconstruction, white supremacy, and the rise of Jim Crow. This book is actually really interesting, and I don't fault anything about it other than I liked the other ones on the list more. This one is quite academic, so I feel like there's parts of it that are a little bit of a slog. Like, it doesn't connect to you as much as other nonfiction, like memoir. Basically, it just feels like you're hearing a lot of, well, this happened one day, and this is the repercussions, and this. It's not very personal, I guess, and I just didn't love it as much. I think there's some incredibly important information in here about the time of Reconstruction, which is right after the Civil War, so after emancipation of slavery. And so, obviously it's about the South, and there's a lot of things that, most Americans are aware of, but we don't realize the lasting impact of it today. And so that was a little bit sobering, and this is good. This is a book that I think people should read. It just didn't quite make the top of my list. Coming in number 3 on this list, Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado Perez. And this book was actually the first book I read for the prize, and I liked it quite a bit. I find it was really interesting, but it was easy to sort of digest some of it. I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I have a bit of a apprehension to reading books that are specifically based on any one thing. So this one was obviously geared towards women and feminist issues. And sometimes I feel like they can be preachy in a way that's just like too much. So I was a little worried that I wouldn't like this, but I found that it was very neutral, as neutral as you can be when you're talking about women's issues and the implicit bias in the world for women. And I really, really enjoyed it, specifically in parts where you're talking about, there's like a section about health that I found really interesting, because you can't say that treatments that work for men are going to work for women, because there is a difference in our biology. And I found that to be super compelling, because I think women's issues get buried under these big things that you hear on the news, and we don't talk about all the other things that majority of women are going to care about having changes. And I think that's a little sad. I think if you talk about difference, like the research for cancer is different, and the research for certain medications for women is different than for men. And, that stuff all women are going to care about, and maybe all people should care about. So I found that book really, really fascinating, and I think men should definitely read that, but I think most women would find something that they didn't even understand or know, and I thought that was really cool. So that's a really good book. Number 2 on this list is American Predator, The Hunt for the Most Meticulous Serial Killer of the 21st Century by Maureen Callahan. And this is basically a true crime book all about Israel Keyes. I just had to stop this and re-record because I totally forgot his name. I knew it started with an I, but I was thinking it was Isaac or Isaiah. It's been a while since I've read these books. I really, really like this. I am a true crime fan. I listen to lots of true crime podcasts. I mean, when you say you're a true crime fan, clearly I don't like crime, particularly murders and serial killers, but I'm interested in the stories that come out of these things. What can I say? It's a morbid curiosity. I really enjoyed this story. It's very much a page turner. Israel Keyes is incredibly scary, and he's not a serial killer that probably most people have really heard of, and which is, again, frightening. That story is really, really good. I feel like if you're into true crime at all, you'll really like that one. So check that one out. And the book coming in the first position, which was so surprising for me, because I really thought I would dislike this book when I first started it. Trick Mirror, Reflections on Self-Delusion by Gia Tolentino. This book really blew me away. This is basically a collection, I guess you call it a collection of essays, and they're just written about life and ideas, and it's super accessible. I've never read a collection of essays before, I don't think, but it's pretty much like a memoir that's an essay form, I guess. I feel like that's the easiest way to describe it, even though that's probably wildly inaccurate. But I felt like this book was going to be another one of like women's issues and being really angry about being a woman and how unfair it is. And I didn't think that I would particularly jive with it, but I found this to be so good. I don't know how to explain it other than I was really, really surprised at how I felt that she articulated things about her life or her points of view without being like so, I don't know what the word is, like hitting people over the head with her ideas. It was more of presenting ideas, understanding maybe some of the things that maybe not aren't good and bad of her own ideas, but like how you can say one side of the view is this and one side is the other, but it's not like attacking the views. It's just saying how she feels about things. I will also say that the author is close to my age. I don't know if she's a little bit younger. And so when she's talking about like growing up a little bit, there's just a lot of nostalgia because we grew up in like similar-ish ways, like kind of middle class. But I was really, really, really impressed by this. This is a debut author as well. So I don't know. I found it so good. And I think I gave it a much higher score too, just by it like surprising me in the best of ways, which is how you want to read books. At least that's how I like to read books. I like to go in thinking, maybe I won't love this as much, and then being like, wow, that was way more interesting than what I had expected. So I really, really liked that. Overall, of the 6 books that I read, I really only disliked 2 of them quite a bit. And obviously one of them I didn't finish. And the other one, that was like the very opposite of Trick Mirror. It was one I was sure I would love and then was super disappointed in it. So, I have to say for the first round, I feel like the crop of books I got was pretty good. And looking forward to the second round. I don't think I know any other booktubers, like personally, or ones that I've talked to that have been judging nonfiction. So hopefully some people have made videos like this so that I can see how they thought about it, particularly the ones who read the books in my group. I will say that over on the BookTube prize channel, it says all the books that were in the prize and which ones made it to the next round. And I will say that of my group, my top 3 are the 3 that are moving to the next round. So I guess I was on the same page as the other readers in my group, which is nice because don't know what it's like to be like critical of books in this kind of vein. So hopefully everyone else is just, I liked it or I didn't like it, and that's their criteria. So I am sure I will make another video for the next group of books. And because of our current state of self-isolation, I'm actually reading through the books super quickly. Of the 6 books for the next round, I've already read 4.5. So I only have 1.5 left to read. And this is interesting because I'm not loving, the current one that I'm reading, I'm really, really loving. The first 4 that I read, not great. So it'll be a tight race to figure out who's at the bottom and who's at the top because I wasn't super impressed with any of the 4 that I've completed. So there's that, which is funny because these books all would have been rated highly from the first round of judges. So maybe I'm a little off with my taste level. I hope everyone is doing great. I am super sporadic still, even though I have zero excuse as to making videos or watching videos, other than I just don't really want to. Sorry. If there's anything you want me to read, if you have any good suggestions, books you've read that you've really been liking in the past couple of months, I have been reading a ton just because there's nothing else to do. But I'm always in the mood for a recommendation, so holla at your girl. Guess I'll talk to you guys all later, hopefully.